Hello. It gives me great pleasure to present before you the author, Arshia Sattar. I will plunge right in, Arshia, with my first question. What does the Mahabharata mean to you? And what is its relevance to society today?
Hi, Nandita. Well, let me take the second part of the question first. How relevant it is to society today, I think it's up to each of us to decide. If we read the text, some of us may find meaning, some of us might find answers to questions that we have, other of us might find a great story. I don't think it's for me to say what the relevance of a text like this is. You know, people are always telling us what Ramayana means and what Mahabharata means. And I find that a bit oppressive. I think that we're all intelligent enough to find our own meanings, to find the things that we care about. So I would much prefer that people found their own relevance, as it were. And what does the Mahabharata mean to me? I think it's a magnificent story. I think it really touches upon the basis of our actions. It forces us to think about what is the right thing to do. It forces us to think about what is good, what is bad. It confronts us with our own weaknesses, our desire to do good. Well, we hope that everybody has the desire to do good. And for me, it's, I can't say it's a text that I go to learn things, but it's certainly a text that I go to frequently, just because I think the story it tells is quite unmatched. Yeah. I can't hear you.
Nandita, you're muted. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I'm so sorry. When you mentioned people asking for answers, I don't know whether this is a pan-India thing or it is simply, a UP thing. But, people actually take the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, whichever text they have at home. And if they're going through a dilemma, they sort of just blindly open a page and point a finger to it. And that verse is supposed to contain the answer they're looking for. And, I was so happy to hear this from you. My next question is about the fact that, you are a renowned international scholar. You read your texts in Sanskrit, you don't go via interpretations, you derive your own meaning, your own interpretation of these texts. From that background, how difficult was it for you to write for a new audience, that is, children who may not have been exposed to these texts at all?
It was fun, actually, because, okay, so what I did with Ramayana and Mahabharata was I worked with a smaller vocabulary. Right? Because I didn't want to simplify the very, very complex ideas that these texts contain. And, this is not for a 3 or a 4-year-old to read. This is for a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 35-year-old. It's as a translator, you get used to working with many, many, many words. Your brain starts to function like a thesaurus, right? How many ways can you say he ran?
Right.
But when you're working with children, it's the opposite process. It's not that you keep saying he ran, but you look for words, you look for sentences, you look for phrases that can engage a younger reader. And, children love big words. They love new big words, right? But the text cannot consist entirely of new big words, especially if it's a known story. Your responsibility is still to tell the story. So it was kind of fun to say, okay. I mean, I can't say that I gave myself like 1,000 words or 2,000 words. You can only use these. But I was very conscious of that, and with Mahabharata especially, I was very aware of the violence. That everybody dies, and everybody dies in horrible ways. And so there's the violence, and then there's also the rather interesting ways that people have children, some of which involve a physical relationship and some of which don't. So to negotiate that, right?
Right.
That was interesting for me. And of course, as I say in my note at the end of the book, whenever I was confused or I'd forgotten something or I didn't quite know how to say it, I went back to the Sanskrit text, and it always helped me. It's not like, oh, I went back to the Sanskrit text and I found, oh my God, this is so difficult. Or on the contrary, the Sanskrit text made it very, very simple for me to get past the problem that I was stuck on. So yeah, Sanskrit texts are great things. More people should read them, really. And Mahabharata is easy Sanskrit compared to Kavya, or even compared to Ramayana. So yeah.
Did you have to compromise with the integrity of the storyline to make it simpler? I mean, I know that you talked about, war, violence and sex, which you could not definitely put into a book for children, but the storyline itself is so complicated and so vast. So did you have to consciously make choices of what could go into a small book?
Of course. I mean, I had to stay with the main story, this story of the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and the people that surround them most immediately. So all the other great stories get left out, But also, I was going over it yesterday to prepare for this conversation, and Vidura is hardly there, and I'm really sorry about that, because I think Vidura is a very important moral voice in the text, and in many ways, he's the only one who acts on what he believes to be true and right and good. Unlike Bhishma, for example, Krishna is acting with a larger ethical framework in mind, but it's Vidura who acts in the moment on what he believes to be true. So I'm very sorry to have left him out. But I thought when we are, when we're doing a text that must be, we were doing a story, we're doing a text that must be accessible, and it must be a text that younger readers enjoy and want to return to. Then these are the sacrifices really that we have to make. So yes, of course I simplified the story, but I don't think I simplified the ideas. And I think that's very important, because I don't take sides in the text at all. I mean, younger readers are, I think, urged to ask the question, who is the good guy? Who are the good guys? Because as we know, the Pandavas are the people whose side we're supposed to be on because Krishna is on their side. But in fact, they're the ones who break the rules during the war. Duryodhana is the completely honorable one. And so I think that's clear in the text. So I think younger readers have to think about, why do good people do bad things, and how can it be that bad people are actually honorable? I think those are important questions for us to ask at any stage of our life,
Sure. When you mention the Vidur character, who's not very prominently mentioned in the book, I actually, when I read the book, I have an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old. And my next mission is to get them. I never force my books down their throat, but this is a book that I want them to know. And I'll tell you why. Because my kids know Mahabharata in patches.
Yes, of course. Yes.
They've read this and they've never had an overarching view of the entire story. And though they are adults now, I feel that is, a starting point. And from can pick up which element of the story they would like to know more,
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is how I feel this is the optimal first introduction, to a complete Mahabharata for anybody, even for an adult, for that matter.
Thank you for saying that, Nandita. Yes, I mean, that is, now that the book is out there, now that I finished writing it, and, I've sort of, in a sense, I've finished engaging with it in the way that, you engage with things that you write, and now it's out there.
Yeah,
and that's the other transformation.
You live with the book and the project,
And then suddenly there's this transformation. You don't see, you send it off, you don't see it for a long time, months. And then suddenly it comes back, packaged. Right. So you have a very different relationship with the physical book that you have with the manuscript that you're writing. And I do think actually that it's a primer. It's a Mahabharata primer, which is, I never intended to be that, but I think I'd always intended for it to be a book that adults can also read with some pleasure. But now I see exactly what you're saying, that it is a way to get to know Mahabharata, in a relatively accessible text, and a very, very beautiful edition, because Sonali Zohra, who's the illustrator for the book, I think has done exceptional work. So it's a good way to get into it. And then, as you said, go read something else. I mean, preferably read a translation of the Sanskrit, of which there are several, easily available on the internet and in bookstores. So yeah. But I hope people don't go to internet sites, and just put in, okay, Vidura, let's see. Wikipedia, okay, very good. Quora, very good. I hope people don't do that. I hope they make a slightly more concerted effort to go from this book to the text itself. Yeah.
Okay, this is a mischievous question. Okay.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Who is your favorite character in the whole Mahabharata?
Oh God, Nandita.
And why?
Well, I'm going to turn the question around on you as well. If I answer it, you must too. Well, obviously, I mean, at some point, I think most of us, the first time we encounter Mahabharata, the person that just grabs us is Karna. One never gets over Karna. Because he is so noble, he is so magnificent, and he is so wronged by his people, by his fate, by everything. So there's an automatic sympathy for Karna. I love Vidura. I really do. I think he is more profoundly the moral center of the story, even than Bhishma is, because Bhishma refuses to act, and Vidura does. I love Duryodhana. I've grown to love Duryodhana, who is another noble person. Of course, he's full of flaws, but who isn't? None of the characters in the Mahabharata, perhaps except for Vidura, is entirely free of human failings like vanity, greed, ambition, jealousy, all of that. It also irritates me that my favorite characters are all men. Yeah, it is a very masculine book. It is a very, very masculine book for somebody, but somebody like myself should more immediately pick a woman character. I've always had great feeling for Amba, who's another character who is continuously wronged, who's never given the dignity or respect that she deserves. She's quite a favorite. And, there are hardly any women. I mean, the text is littered with women, right? But there are hardly any women in the text because all the female energy is concentrated in Draupadi.
Right.
For very obvious reasons. But it does mean that the other women characters become shadowy compared to her. She is the bright light.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of writers these days are doing, where they pick up one character from Mahabharata and part fiction and part what they derive from the text, and they kind of build a narrative around around the woman. Do you think, and this follows from your answer, do you think that the moral centers in some ways are also with the women?
Well, certainly in both the texts, the women are the most wronged, so they have
Right.
righteousness on their side. I don't think the moral center lies with women, because if you say that the moral center lies with the women, then you're shifting responsibility, right?
Right.
Men need to figure this out. They need to do things that are righteous. They need to do things that are just. They need to do good. So I don't want to shift the moral center to women. I would much rather that,
men take accountability.
Absolutely, responsibility, and they are accountable, as you say. That's very, very important. So yeah.
Okay, this is not a mischievous question as much as it is a question that can get both of us into trouble, but I must ask it, and you can refuse to answer it, right?
Yes.
What is the Mahabharata to you? Is it purely fiction? Does it have part history, part fiction, or is it entirely mythology?
When I teach Ramayana and Mahabharata, especially when I teach to Indian students, somebody is bound to say, it's such a common, but ma'am, is this true? Right? And it's like, of course it's true, but it's not true in the sense of necessarily historical fact. What it is true of Ramayana and Mahabharata, it is true to the human condition. It is true to human experience. It is true to our dilemmas, our problems, our ambitions, our anxieties, our aspirations. It is absolutely and completely true in that regard. And recently I enrolled for a course on Mahabharata conducted by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune, which of course, they created the Great Critical Edition. And the Institute and its sort of Mahabharata scholars have a really interesting formulation. They say it's true, but it's not real. Yeah?
Oh.
Yeah, and I think that, and the other thing people say, like, for me, the fact that these are literary truths, that these are existential truths, that these are human truths, far overrides the importance of it being historically true. And also because, okay, so probably once long, long ago, there was a king, there was a prince who had a stepmother. His stepmother exiled him. He went into the forest with his wife and brother, and another bad person came and kidnapped his wife. And then there was a great war, and he got his wife back, and he got his kingdom back. That is not Ramayana. Ramayana is Hanuman, the flying monkey that speaks Sanskrit. Ramayana is Ravana, 10 heads and 20 arms. Ramayana is, magical weapons. Ramayana is the golden deer, right? So it's very, very likely that these stories, some version of these stories did actually occur. But the text that we have, the glorious text that we have, in which the gods act, in which, magic is around the corner, where emotions are larger than life, where kings live for 60,000 years, where Yudhishthira opens his gambling with, 100,000 chests full of pearls, yeah? These things are not true, but what they tell us is a truth about ourselves. So, the answer is they're true and they're not.
Lovely. It's a beautiful answer. And I was hoping that you'd give your scholarly spin on this one crucial thing as to how do we really relate to these, which as you know, there are segments who consider this, history, and every element, every place mentioned there matches a place in India today, which may or may not be true. Um, also, do you think that each Indian carries the war of Kurukshetra in their psyche today?
I don't know what that means. Can you say more? I don't understand the question.
How we have, we are known to be a nation of peace-loving people, and we suddenly show a very militant side, which means that somewhere the warrior ancestors, somewhere the hurts that we have accumulated down the centuries, that sort of comes out. And because Mahabharata is so warlike, we kind of sort of relate to it. We kind of think that there are righteous reasons for which we should kind of pick up weapons. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think there are perhaps all cultures in the world, all nations in the world, at some point are warlike.
Right.
They don't all have epics that are as focused on war as the Mahabharata or the Iliad are, for example. And I honestly don't think that there's an excuse for us to be as divided, as hateful, as aggressive, as violent as we are now. If we say,
Right.
oh, well, Mahabharata lives in our psyche, that's why we are like that. Again, we're not taking responsibility for what we're doing and thinking.
Right.
And I think that's very important. I think that if we really, really stop to think about what we were doing to each other, perhaps we wouldn't do it, There's too much of this, oh, it happened, people are just not acknowledging the consequences of their actions, or their thoughts, really. Yeah.
Right. And the Mahabharata very, very properly closes the war chapter as well, which is like complete demolition of everything. So it does tell us where we are headed if we keep going past flashpoints and going into war mode.
Yes.
So it does give you the solution that this had happened and maybe it should never happen again.
It's the end of an age in Mahabharata. Yeah. It's the dawning of Kali Yuga, which we live in now.
Right.
So it's very serious. It's very, very serious. What happens when hatred is the primary impulse,
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Do you think, and this is more for my the young readers who are watching this, do you think, given the world we live in, of screens, of tablets, of movies, Netflix, what have you, do you think that individually or family wise people have to make the concerted effort to return children to books? I said girls, just because I have daughters. Return children to books.
Yeah. I do think that, but it's not new, because even when we were young, our parents and ourselves, we made an effort to go to books. There's always something else to do. You could run around in the park, you could play with your friends, you could dream, you could sleep. But parents kept putting books in front of you, but also the other thing is, parents can't tell their children, you should read. If parents are not reading themselves, if children don't see parents spending many, many hours of their waking life with books or around books, children are not interested. Children love to mimic, they love to imitate. If you think about it, there are so many, many pictures from all kinds of families, right? All kinds of ages, all kinds of generations, of a little person reading a newspaper, right? Or pretending like the newspaper is really, really absorbing. And they're 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. I have a picture of myself like that. I'm sure in your family, somebody, there's a picture of somebody that looks like, what is that? That is imitation, right? That is like, Papa wakes up in the morning and drinks his tea and he's, I also want to be. So until parents themselves start reading, I don't think we're going to really, really go back. Let me not say back, go forward to children having an interest in books. Yeah.
So as we're nearing the end of this session, is there a question that you hoped you'd be asked that I left out? Is there any such question?
Oh goodness, no. No, it's a funny thing actually, Nandita, because as I was saying earlier, once you finish writing a book, you finish writing the book.
Right.
And it kind of, quite honestly, I had to read it again last night because I haven't read it since it came out. And I was like, oh my goodness, I better prepare for this. So no, I mean, every question is a surprise. Every question is, worth thinking about, if not worth answering. There's no such thing as a bad question. So yeah.
Let me also tell our viewers this, that, between the writing and of a book and the, the physical format, all of us grow, ages, other concerns take us over.
Absolutely.
And in human time, it's actually at least 2 years if you're very lucky. If your book has been commissioned and,
Yes.
it's been picked up immediately, sometimes it's 8 years or 10 years. So there's
Yeah,
a huge gap between the book being written and also how it's written and how it comes out in its final form, because there are so many revisions, and sometimes you just get so tired and accommodate your editor because you say, I can't go beyond this anymore. So a book is it's a long project. So and which makes me very curious, what are you working on now?
Oh God. Well, lockdown, pandemic has been difficult.
Sure.
I had a book idea before we were all locked into our homes, and it disappeared. I mean, I lost control of it. I couldn't get it back,
Right.
because of everything else that was happening around us. And this, the Mahabharata was written, parts of it, most of it, during first lockdown.
Wow.
And it does bizarrely, because there's so much death, and there's so much grief, and there's so much sadness.
I know you've had a personal thing too, and I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So so now suddenly, literally in this last month, my wheels are turning again. I don't know if I'm going to go back to the book that I never got started on, or whether it's going to be something else. But it'll be Ramayana and Mahabharata again. It'll be for adults, I think. I want to write about moksha, actually, about the possibility of moksha, and what moksha might mean to different people. To a sannyasi, it means one thing. It's a funny thing to say, because moksha means that we all dissolve into the great absolute.
Right.
But when we are living our lives, moksha means something different to each of us.
Right.
And maybe for us,
that's a brilliant premise. That's a brilliant premise.
Well, at the moment, maybe moksha just means absence of pain, absence of grief, absence of sadness. Not even the positive thing of like happiness, contentment, joy. I think those are the human experiences that have really been taken away from us these 2 years.
Yes.
And everything that's been happening. Those are the things we need to get back. But in the meantime, I'll write about the fact that they're not here. So I'm hoping that but this is also the thing, that one always writes a book from where one is in one's own life.
Right.
You can't, you were saying about how long it takes for a book to actually come to fruition. So you're one person when you wrote the book, but you could be a different person when the book is actually published,
Absolutely,
you know.
yes.
So in a way, it's always hard to talk about a book that you've written because you're done. You're thinking about something else. So,
Right.
but it's nice that, it's nice to be made to go back to the books that you wrote. Yeah.
Thank you for this session, Arshia. It's
Thank you,
been
Nandita.
so engaging and so
Thank you.
enjoyable that, I do hope all our readers and all our listeners go and get a copy of this book.
Yeah, I have a copy too.
Let's hold it up. This is the book, beautifully illustrated and written by Arshia Sattar. What I really enjoyed about this session, and every time I meet you, I feel that you're an inspiration. And I hope our young readers understand the value of leading full, scholarly, enjoyable lives, that you do show people, not everybody is going to be a scholar like you, but there could be people who are inspired to follow on your footsteps.
Thank you, Nandita.
Thank
It's
you
been
so
a pleasure
much.
talking to you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for being on here with me. Thank you.